some point in the class, it hurts a lot.
Let's go to a wall there.
Oh,
that's the camera.
let's see. All right, so what this is it allows us to examine an analogous motion to how we should be throwing our sword. You cannot code with one of these, right? So that's a plus right there. So it gets us thinking about that.
Thou shalt be.
So we're going to keep coming back to these to examine things over and over with them as we go. For now, let's just get it swinging horizontally over our head. This is an analogous motion to our onside shot that came from high right, went to high left, and returned back to high right again. Okay, so we get it swinging around. I want you to notice some things as you're swinging this thing around. First of all, notice how your body tends to lean away from the weight as it goes around. When it's behind you, you tend to shift forward a little. When it's in front of you, you tend to lean back just a little bit. That little shift of weight. As long as we are throwing flat circular shots and swinging our weapon, we can apply these little principles like this to adding power to our shots. They're subtle little things. Notice also that your hand is pulling against the pull of the weight. So just like you're leaning back slightly when the weight's in front of you, your hand is actually starting to tug back towards you as it comes around. And then your hand's moving forward a little as it comes around behind you. It's like our hand is doing a little circle, and the tip is doing a big circle, and the hand is moving a little sooner than the tip. It's like you're always leading it a little bit, leading it along, dragging it through the motion. Notice how a small, well-timed motion, a little motion of the hand, can create a big effect out on the tip. This is true for a sword too, if you're moving in a circular fashion. Something else to notice is if you get it swinging moderately hard, that you may feel your hips shimmying a little bit. You've got a little bit of torso rotation going on. And I say little, it's a tiny little movement of the torso that's happening there. And that's as big as it needs to be to generate force in your sword blows if it's timed right and if you're moving your sword in a comfortable circular fashion rather than coning. It only takes us a little bit. We've all been trained originally with the big hip movement and throw. Intentionally exaggerated, I think, usually, to teach that sword blow. In fact, one of the problems I think that new fighters can have is they look at an experienced fighter and they go, he taught me to move my hips, but I'm watching them, and I don't even see the hip movement. Well, it's probably still there, but just like swinging this thing around, it's really tiny, and it's timed to the blow just right, and that's all you really need. It does have to be there to generate maximum force, but it's really little. Something else to notice when we're swinging around here, along with that leaning that I was talking about in the body and the little movement of the hip, notice what it does to the balls of your feet. You can feel the bottoms of your feet pressing against the ground. As the weight comes around from your right towards your left, you should feel just a little bit of pressure in your right foot. And when it comes around behind you from left to right, you should feel a little bit of pressure in your left foot. You can kind of exaggerate that. Push down with the foot at the right time. So as it starts to come around on your right, push down with your right foot. As it starts to come around to the left, push down with your left foot. So you're kind of rocking a little bit back and forth between your feet. You notice just that tiny little pressure in your feet is generating more speed and power there in your hand and in rotation. Once again, a little thing makes a big difference. All right, so let's go do that offside. So we're going to swing from our left to our right with it across the top, just to feel the same thing. Now and then, all important part where it's crossing in front of us and we'll be hitting our opponent, we're pushing with the left foot for the offside shot. And that's what speeds it up there. All the same things apply though. The little circular motion of the hand, the pressure in the feet alternating back and forth, the very slight shimmy of the hips, the leaning of the body backwards and forwards, opposite of where the weight is passing. All that stuff remains the same. All right. So, let's go back to the stick. We're doing a lot of the switching back and forth. So, there are differences between a whirligig and a stick. That seems like an obvious thing to say. One of the disadvantages of the stick, the thing that we all struggle the most with, is when you're holding a whirligig, at the point that you pinch that string, you've got a universally flexible joint. and that's awesome. When you're holding a stick, not so much. And that's what I was talking about. You've got to be able to alternate your grip and learn how to get your hand and your arm out of the way of your motion. And that's going to stiff or hang on to it too hard. It's not really important. But what you want to eventually achieve is that same kind of universal joint where it's rotating comfortably. You know, and some of that's going to be rotating in the hand, and some of that's going to be rotation of the wrist, and a little bit of getting the body and the arm out of the way. All those things combined will give you an approximation of a universal joint up there where you're swinging. But that's what you're after, to really be able to utilize that, all those forces. This is where all those little things, like the pressure of the feet, the leaning, the little circle of the hand, all those things can generate enough force for your blow if you achieve a universal joint out of the hand and wrist. If you don't, then that's not going to work so well. Let's see. One of the big advantages of the stick over whirligig, however, is that it's easier to stop the darn thing. I mean, why don't we all fight with warning stars? Well, they're illegal in the SCA. But there's a reason they weren't the most popular weapon in the whole wide world in real battle. Was they're hard to control. They're awesomely powerful in how hard they hit, but it's hard to stop its motion when suddenly you need to do something else, like cut to a different spot or defend yourself. So, advantages and disadvantages for the stick. So, let's talk about applying some of these principles. Okay, so, let's put the sword up here and highlight it. This is the part where you guys are going to have to do some thinking. Think back to when you were swinging the whirligig. And what we're going to be doing is throwing this horizontal shot, or horizontal shot comes around from high right, back around to high right again. Probably the easiest thing to start with is from here, as you start this forward motion, think about pushing down with the flat of your right foot as it goes across here. Just push down with that foot, and that's where the force comes from. Your hand can be right out here, and you can still generate force because you're pushing down there. You'll also probably very naturally, when you push down with that foot, you'll feel it drive your hips over a little bit. And it's okay too, let that happen. A little motion of the hip. Don't worry about moving the hip, but when you drive the foot down, it's going to move your hip a little bit. The heavier your weapon is, you won't feel it as much with this, but with a heavier weapon, you'll feel it pulling this way, which means that as you're driving that foot down, you're going to lean away from it a little bit. So your shoulders might lean back a tiny bit as the blow comes out, and that will actually speed the tip up also. We're going to come back to trigger everything. Yes?
What about coning the opposite direction? I find a lot of times I throw, and then in order to relax and get my speed, I tend to drop, and then I have to grip again on that.
Yeah, I don't see that as a problem. That coning is a response to gravity. If you're relaxed, you'll tend to cone down. If you're up at maximum speed and you're relaxed, you won't cone down anyways at the point of the hit. So like if you're slowing down in the backfield, you're going to be coning because you're relaxed and gravity's pulling down on the weapon. But when you start to come up to speed here, it'll either flatten out, or if you've actually changed your angle, so you're actually throwing a diagonal, you might stay down. But at that point, you're not driving across as much as you're driving up at a diagonal with it. So once you're up at speed, downward coning won't happen because centrifugal force will lift it up flat to whatever actual plane and circle that you're using. When you slow down, it'll tend to go down. And I think that's a good thing, actually, because this is as good time as any for this part of the lecture. I think the most neglected part of fighting is the wind-up. And some people go so far as to say you should never wind up because it throws grass or shots. And I'm going to say just the opposite, that the wind-up is important and sets the foundation for your entire shot. There are schools of thought that you have to start in the position and have no telegraph, you throw directly from where you're at. And I've always kind of given a partial ear to that school of thought. Duke Jean was a great example to me in that he likes to throw, he throws all the shots from back here. And if you can get away with it, he'll fight from here. But if he's being pressed at all, you'll see that he's up here blocking. Our game has gotten too complicated to take this risk most of the time. There's some really fast people out there. So the sword's up here blocking. But when he throws, he cycles it back to the shoulder before he throws. And you would think that that would make a telegraph. You'd say, oh, I see it coming. And it would slow